And we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today we're talking about Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Ever since the first Five Nights at Freddy's came out back in 2014, the series took this really simple concept that can be summed up with animatronics are creepy, and it just ran with it. Now in 2021, we're looking at the newest entry in the franchise called Security Breach, and it's a bit of a departure. Instead of being fully set entirely in a security room, you have full roam of this large Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, and it plays out kind of like a slightly more kid-friendly version of Alien Isolation. And I do say slightly here, because despite all the colors, it is still a horror game. And on top of that, it does have a few unique tricks that keep it interesting. You play as Gregory, a kid who, for whatever reason, starts off stashed away inside Freddy Fazbear's guts. Yeah, that's how the game opens. There is almost no exposition as to what's going on here. After like a fairly brief tutorial, you're pretty much thrown right into it. You got to avoid killer robots, stalk around the halls, you got to hide in closets, bins, escaping detection. If you play a lot of horror games, at this point you probably know what to expect. But what makes this game unique, and in some ways actually better, is how it incorporates the Five Nights at Freddy's stuff into this classic horror game mold. At any time you can tap into the Pizzaplex's surveillance camera network and use it to track stalkers more easily, avoiding them. It's simple, but it's a powerful tool that makes getting around a lot easier. And when you're forced to go through sections without security cameras, it makes their absence feel like a really actually big deal. Like you feel much more vulnerable without them. And that tension is something that's fairly unique to this game in terms of that exact feeling and expectation. Of course, this is a Five Nights at Freddy's game, so jump scares and screamers are also a pretty big part of the experience. Fair warning, you're pretty much inevitably going to get caught a few times by the stalkers here. And every time they get you, you get the full Five Nights at Freddy's screamer effect. If you don't like that kind of stuff, that's what kind of game this is. That's who made it, that's the brand, the franchise, whatever. So you're not avoiding that. Power does come into play a lot too. If you've played or seen some of the older games in the series, you know that managing power is a consistent concern. And here you have a flashlight which is consistently sort of dwindling. It can be recharged at power stations around the complex though. And there's also various doors powering security rooms, and also with Freddy Fazbear himself. And that's probably the most unique aspect of this game. Freddy Fazbear isn't trying to stuff you in a suit and kill you in this one. Instead, he's actually on your side. He's basically your main ally, like tells you what you need to be doing, helps you out throughout the story. Probably his most interesting function is that you can hide inside him, which actually lets you explore the complex pretty freely without having to worry about the other animatronics. He's basically kind of like a moving hiding place that they never find you in. But of course, he's only got so much power, so it's something you don't really get to abuse. He does run out of power, and then you're not able to use him again until the next hour. And there's actually a lot of sections where he's flat out unavailable, so it's not an ability you're just going to be able to rely on to get through the whole game or anything like that. However, it's really good for going back through areas you've already been through quickly, but it's a relatively minor addition. Does that make it not fun when it happens? Absolutely not. It's definitely fun. Another thing that makes this game more Freddy-like is that sometimes you find yourself in a security office with like the alarms going off, and these sequences are just like a direct riff on the original games where you're looking at cameras, locking down doors to keep the bots from getting inside and jump scaring you to death. At first, I was honestly a little worried these would be tedious sequences, but the game finds some pretty new ways to mix these up and keep them fresh, and they don't always play out in the same way, and some are a lot less stressful than others. But I'm just talking about the new stuff. How does the game actually play out? Well, your basic goal is to escape, so Freddy gives instructions for various ways to get out, so navigation's a big part of the game. The Pizzaplex itself is large, and it's got pretty much everything you'd expect from an indoor amusement park like this. There's various attractions, restaurants, gift shops, and stage shows, as well as a huge backstage area with a loading dock, an employee lounge, kitchens, robot servicing areas, etc. There's really just a ton to see, and it's all completely interconnected in a seamless way, and honestly, it's one of the best things about this game. You're mostly going to be traveling from place to place trying to escape. Sometimes the game gives you an option for how to proceed, which is nice, and as you go through the story, you'll be constantly finding new keys that allow you to explore even more of the space, mostly for collectibles, but you can sometimes find upgrade items that do like stuff like improve the battery life on the flashlight, which is handy and makes it worthwhile. It's just a fun setting for a game to take place in, and they do a great job taking full advantage. Like, just exploring is fun. You don't really need the jump scares. It's like fun to look around, take in the sights, and it's a genuinely well-designed, cool-looking, and fun environment. The fact that it's built logically and really feels like a functioning place adds a lot to the experience. There are notes, collectibles, and a few upgrades lying around all over the place, so there is incentive to check everything out, and it adds this extra layer of tension. Yeah, we're gonna have an urge to collect things, which is at odds with the overall goal of beelining to an exit to avoid getting caught. It's just a shame that the actual gameplay can kind of be a bit of a drag at times. It's not bad, but there are a few things about the game that make it a little frustrating at times. Like, let's just start with the basic gameplay stuff. Avoiding stalkers can sometimes be straight up annoying. It can take forever to get around these guys because you have to be really careful not to get caught by them. Like, if you can see them, they can probably see you, so you're pretty much required to use cameras to spot things and make sure that they're nowhere near you before you get moving. That in of itself wouldn't be so bad, but switching between cameras and first person can be disorienting, to say the least. It's easy to get mixed up about what direction you're facing, or get confused about camera placement, or worst of all, coming out of a hiding place and getting caught by one of these incredibly annoying security robots that you just didn't notice. Like, let's talk about the robots, actually. Outside of the main machines hunting you down, there are these security robots zipping around all over the place. If one of them catches you, which basically only happens if they touch you, then they'll hit the alarm and a stalker will pretty much just teleport to your location and start chasing you. So basically, if one of these guys spots you, you have to immediately run and hide or you're dead meat. Again, all of this is fine, but what makes this so annoying is how fast they zip around and how inconsistent they are. They have a general pattern they follow, but a lot of the time they'll move around in random ways and catch you off guard. Their fast movement is another annoying thing. Like, they move around way faster than you can sneak, so getting out of their way forces you to sprint around, which can also get attention to the stalkers. Your best bet for dealing with these guys is to just stay as far as you can away from them, but there are sections like the arcade where there's like a dozen of them that you have to sneak around, and it's more annoying than anything else. Like, it's not well designed or well balanced. It doesn't really feel like a genuine challenge, but more like they threw a ton of crap at you, which doesn't really mesh well with, like I said, how well logically consistently designed the world itself is. Getting caught is not a slap on the wrist either. The only time the game saves is when you use these save stations, so if you get caught, you'll lose progress. That means rewatching cutscenes, taking elevators again, repeating chase sequences. Like, if you die, you go back. And this system's pretty much taken right out of Alien Isolation, and there are a lot of people that thought it was kind of annoying there as well. Now, some people, including myself, honestly can get some enjoyment out of this. It feels like a very old school influence in a very new school type of game, but that's when it doesn't become tedious. I like that it adds to the tension, but if you're repeating the same section for the fourth time, it does feel frustrating. That being said, that's the worst of it. How the stalkers work pretty much feels generally correct. It's just when you have to deal with them and the security robots, that's when it's annoying. That's just me. Maybe I was impatient or had bad luck, I don't know. And a lot of people don't have problems at all with these kinds of stealth horror games, where a lot of the gameplay comes from avoiding enemies, but at times it feels like this game is just a little rude about it. Like, instead of designing a challenge, it just throws a bunch at you at once. And it feels cheap in those sections, but when you do manage to get through a section without getting caught or just barely escaping, it does feel satisfying. You have to give it that. And the game does space this stuff out. It doesn't just consistently throw stalkers at you nonstop, so you're not always creeping around. A lot of the areas are more about exploration. Some are more about running away rather than sneaking. They do mix things up, and generally I think the experience is enjoyable. Another issue I will say I have encountered, though, is bugs. In general, my experience with the game has been pretty good, but I did encounter this really big game that kind of completely broke my progress. About 3 hours in, some scripting must have broken or something, because I started to get mission objectives that I already finished, and progress basically stopped completely, and I had to restart the game. Now, this probably occurred because I started playing before the day one patch, so I have hopes this is not common for people, but fair warning, that did happen to me, so make multiple saves just in case. I mean, which is good practice anyways. Like I've mentioned already, this game is really graphically impressive, and I just want to come back to that a little bit before we're done. Every place you go is packed with these little details and Easter eggs, and I mean it when I say the Pizzaplex is probably the best thing about this game. There are some minor graphical hiccups sometimes when you're transitioning between different areas, but from my experience, this game was mostly really smooth outside of the one big bug that I mentioned. The character models also look incredible, and the animations for some of these guys are just incredibly expressive and tons of fun. I will say, like, it's weird to me that I have gotten this far without mentioning the thing probably everyone's asking. Is this game scary? I would go ahead and say, yeah. We're pretty hardened horror game players over here, so there's, you know, maybe a little bit of desensitization to that. We play a lot of these, and sometimes a lot of them start to feel similar, but there were definitely some freaky parts in this game. Like, it's scarier than the cute PS5 splash screen is going to lead you to believe. There's no violence or anything. Everything like that is implied rather than shown, but in some ways that almost makes it a little spookier. They're definitely not afraid to go full horror in some parts, and I definitely don't want to spoil that. I kind of had low expectations for this, not necessarily because they changed the formula. I was actually thinking that was a pro rather than a con, and I had some inklings that they could have done this right. For some reason, I was just a little pessimistic about it though, so I had kind of low expectations, and the game easily exceeded them. It's not perfect. Some sections can end up being more annoying than scary, but this game has a lot going for it, particularly the environments. They are fantastic. The monsters are cool. Sometimes things are inconsistent, but the scares are legitimately chilling at times. Even after the day one patch, it is a little rough around the edges. Security robots can be a little annoying when they pop up in big numbers, but if you like games like Amnesia and especially Alien Isolation, there's a lot to like here. The camera system, while a little disorienting at times, is great, and it's an interesting feature that gives you just enough control that makes sneaking around easier than in other horror games without making it a cakewalk. And it also adds unique thing about this game that separates it from other games in the genre, which I think is something that really goes a long way. And the various security room scenarios do a really good job of breaking up all the creeping around. This is not an easy game, and it requires a certain level of patience to get through, but I think all around, we recommend it, unless you don't like jump scares. But that's what I have to say about the game. What do you have to say? Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.